And I'm going to start preparing us to move into what I prepared as my main segment today, which is shuffling. Shuffling the cards. I have several decks that I have ordered because I really want to demonstrate how some shuffling techniques change the order of the deck and how they can be used in conjunction most effectively. This deck is going red joker all the way through all the hearts into spades, so I'm alternating colors. I'm looking at diamonds after that into the clubs. We're all in order. We are a 54 card deck. We've got 2 jokers, 1 on each end. I did that to preserve the symmetry of the deck because it makes some of these shuffles look very interesting. I want to talk about first what is probably one of the most common ways that people shuffle decks, which is the bridge shuffle. I have some reservations about doing the bridge shuffle with decks that are special to me. And in fact, I won't be doing it to this one, the Prism Day cards. They're very beautiful and they're in very good condition. It's one of relatively newer deck to my collection. So I'm going to spare this one, the bridge, which bends the cards quite a bit, and bring out an older deck of mine. This one, both of these decks are gifts from Sonora. Thank you, Sonora. This one ordered in the same way as the previous one. This deck's a little more worn. You can see the, little specks of my grimy hands imparting themselves onto the cards. And some of them will have some wear on the edges at this point that may be a little uneven. And so, try and talk about marked decks for a moment. Often when I'm working with a deck that has marked cards, and it does happen, and I don't mind it in terms of bringing my intuitive practice to that kind of deck, I will either try to avert my gaze and not really make my card draw influenced at all by what I read from the card back, or I'll do some solid, like I'll just burn 3 cards off the top and draw the one underneath. And that one, of course, I didn't draw with any bias. I just realized that I just shuffled an ordered deck that I was really trying to preserve the order of. I'm going to give away how that shuffle looks. Let's talk about the bridge shuffle. I got this one out to bridge it, and I want to observe with you how the order changes of the cards. There are 2 things to consider when you're shuffling a deck for me that I consider for tarot readings. I want to make sure that the order is sufficiently random because I really want to have a fair shot at drawing any card in the deck. I want to enable the deck to have opportunity to convey to me any message that's available from the cards in there. So I want to shuffle enough that I have lost track of any cards that I had drawn and are reshuffling into the deck, and believe that every card in the deck has moved around enough to have a fair shot at winding up near the top where I'm going to be drawing. So let's look at it. Let's look at the bridge shuffle, which is a pretty good way to shuffle. I'm going to actually grab my phone here and throw up a stopwatch, just so we can look at how much time you might spend on each of these shuffling techniques to get a shuffled deck. There is... there we go, perfect cut. I've got it ordered so I can see. There was a whole bunch of studies that have been done on the bridge shuffle. They concluded after some very complicated maths that about 7 of these produces a sufficiently shuffled deck. Let's see how the order changes a little bit when I do one little bridge shuffle. Now again, I'm bending the cards a little bit, especially on that second part of the bridge. I think that bends them much more possible to do your first half without bending them as extremely. But this deck I've done, and I'm comfortable bending them a little bit. Maybe I'll have a deck where I'll do this a little bit to it if I notice it getting kind of a bias, kind of warped one way or the other. Or I'll do the bridge shuffle the other way to kind of bend them back the other way, while knowing that all the while doing a bridge shuffle, I'm wearing a deck down and making it a little more malleable. I want to look at the order with you after one bridge. You'll notice now we've combined all of our hearts and diamonds because we really picked half the deck off, the top and bottom halves of the deck, and wove them together. All of the similar ranks are now very near each other. because we kind of put them in order in rank against each other. The order of those ranks is fairly well preserved after 1. There are some instances where we still have cards in sequence, maybe up to 3. My riffle was not perfect, you know. So, I mean, after 1 riffle, I'm not necessarily totally shuffled here. There's still a lot of places where this similar order is going to come up. If I'm doing a lot of larger format readings and I've drawn through several cards, there might be a clump of cards that I just shuffled back in that are still in a position very familiar to me. And I'll be drawing and then draw one that I'm like, oh, I drew those in that sequence before. And that starts screwing with me in terms of what I want to interpret in the reading, because now I'm thinking about, I didn't shuffle well enough. I'm going to give it a second one, approximately half and half. I do like to preserve the life of my cards, so I'm really gently weaving the corners together, and I'm really not bending them too much. It is possible to do that kind of riffle shuffle without bending them much. Again, I'll be a little gentle as I finish the bridge. Now let's see a little bit of what has happened. Hey, that Jack 10 clubs got broken up. Jack 10 and 9 were all together. Now I've still got Kings, Queens, Jacks, 10s. The ranks, you know, that met up are still relatively sorted. I've got all my high cards on one side of the deck. My suits are at this point a little more randomly distributed. I'm liking what 2 riffles did to the arrangement of suits, but we're still seeing, now I'm getting to the lower cards. I've got 1 king down here, you know, wrapping around to the other side. The organization of the ranks is still really clear to me, looking through the deck after 2 riffles. Remembering that we're trying to get up to 7. I'm going to go ahead and speed through this. Do 3, and then 4, 5, and I didn't time this, but it's not taking long. 6. We are under a minute. I'll be honest, when I order a deck like this, I will sometimes spend like 10 or 15 minutes shuffling. I really, really enjoy shuffling, though. That's, you know, me. I love the process. I lost track if it was 6 or 7 because I started talking about something else. But regardless of this is 6 or 7, we're going to look again at how the order has changed with that many riffles. I still have Ace, King, Hearts next to each other, Queen, 10, Hearts. Got a little handful of clumps. You know, my imperfect riffles not separating every card. A little clump of diamonds there. It's interesting that they found each other again. Still seeing 9s and 6s, you know, kind of clumped. The pairings of the ranks there still happening in some places, but at this point, I'm feeling all right about that. Still seeing some general clumping in the deck where all my high cards are on kind of one side and all my lower cards are on one side. That's not mingling quite as far, but after those 6 or 7 riffles, and thank you, Rachel, for confirming in the chat that it was 6 for me, I'll give it the 7th. Maybe that's why I had those couple clumps. I was 1 shy. The riffle shuffle is a great way to shuffle a deck very quickly and effectively. It's a little technical to execute. I'm not going to go into the actual method of performing a riffle shuffle here, but I'm sure you will find other videos on YouTube that detail it for you in easy to learn ways. But that 7 produced a, what to me is somewhat satisfactory shuffle deck. Again, I'm still seeing that bias a little bit of the distribution of ranks high on one end, low on the other. But at this point, everyone's moved around quite a bit. I respect this ordering. This is a pretty good deck. There's a further way to randomize the order in which cards appear to you, and that is to randomize where you draw from the deck. A very easy way to make a deck shuffled effectively. I'll say I want to draw from this section of the deck, and I'm going to indiscriminately pull 1 card from there, and that's good. That's a randomly drawn card. A somewhat shuffled deck. And now, just to make sure my subsequent draws are different, I'm going to pull from another area of the deck, pull 1 card out. Boom, we're good. That can be a really good way to draw, especially from a deck that you're not confident is necessarily sufficiently shuffled. I want to talk about some other shuffling techniques that I might do on decks of cards that I'm a little more guarded in terms of protecting the quality of. I talked a lot of crap about the riffle shuffle, and I want to backtrack to say that the riffle shuffle is not bad, and it's not going to damage your cards a lot. And I am really about my best practices with some of these decks that are sacred to me, and I want to treat them as sacred. So I want to give them these special protections and special elements to the ritual and my interaction with them. I really believe that adds a lot to the intention of what the cards are and how they are to serve us. And I think that's important. How I treat the cards is, indicative to me, as part of the intention I'm reflecting on them, is how I want them to serve me, and I want to take care of them. This is a partnership, right? We're going to do this together. I'm going to take care of these cards. There's another way of shuffling, because a lot of times when I tell people, please don't riffle shuffle this deck, they go, okay, how do I shuffle it then? There are 3 different techniques that I want to go over. One of them that I'll start with is really great because it's easy to do. And that is a great thing about anything. It's easy to do and it's more accessible. That's great news. It's one that you're probably familiar with from your younger days. Here again is an ordered deck, the same order as last time. We're going to do the puddle. Just going to do some of this. Rachel, I'll see you in the chat. You have a high stakes rummy game tomorrow. Well, one of the shuffling techniques I'm going to show you today is really good at enabling you to effectively stack a deck a little bit. So I'll mention that a little bit for you, the benefits for your performance in that high stakes game of rummy. So here I am just doing this pool, and I haven't done it long. This is actually a very effective way to shuffle a deck. Christathis, this is called the washing machine. I love that name for it. Yes, these are all just tumbling. I'm going what? Warm, maybe warm. No, these are whites. These are whites. I can put this on hot. Maybe with an extra spin on the rinse. Anyway, this is easy to do. It doesn't take a whole long time, and as long as I'm gentle with how I'm pushing them around and gentle with how I'm rejoining them again, I'm not going to ding up the sides and corners of these cards that much. So this is also pretty safe to do to a deck. I mean, I've picked one of the decks I just said is special to me, and I'm trying to keep in good condition, and I'm like, this is fine. Absolutely fine to mush it around because I'm being careful and gentle in the way I'm doing it. I'm sure you could mush them around in a way that did ding your sides and corners, so maybe something to be aware of. But that was pretty brief, right? I think that I spent less time on that than I did on riffle shuffling the 7 times. So I just want to see how far we've come in terms of the ordering here. I've got ace king, there's 2, 3, 4, 9, 8, 9. There's a little clumps of interesting, king, queen, and the jack of hearts, pretty close. Permanent press, yes, that's the cycle I should use for my cards, permanent press. So I'm looking at still some clumpings of ranks and some clumpings of suits, or suit and rank in some places. So that wasn't quite enough washing machine. I'm going to give it another cycle to really get it in position. This may give you an idea of a little bit how long you might want to do this to get an accurate draw. Now, if I'm drawing from random places in the deck and I'm cutting to random places to do a draw, maybe that initial little shuffle I did was enough, with the addition of drawing from unique places in the deck to really give me sufficiently random cards. That's some food for thought. And it'll save you some time shuffling when you're trying to cast a reading. Sometimes you don't have a lot of time. Sometimes you're talking to someone, the questions are coming up, and they're ready for a card, and you're still trying to do riffle number 5. We're looking a little more shuffled this time. Now that I've washing machined a little longer. Still got a couple pairs. Interesting how the pairs have found each other again, even with this alternate shuffle. I guess there's just so much to, I'm basically dividing different halves of the deck and mushing them together. It just keeps happening that way. I'm doing all my shuffling with the cards face up, so we get even more of a chance to watch how they move around. So that's an idea. This is now getting pretty well shuffled. I would go a little longer on the shuffling to really finish shuffling it, but I want to move on to talking about some more techniques. One of them is the Cascade Shuffle. Maybe that's what it's named. It's fairly simple. You take the cards, and I'm just going to let, with my fingers on the top and bottom, I'm going to let a packet fall out and pick up. And then I'm going to do it again, let another packet fall out, but this one on top. Bad angle to show that on top of the other. So I'm just tossing packets of cards into place. Now this, admittedly, is not going to change the order of the deck very much. I'm effectively just cutting it into 4 or 5 or 6 packets and rearranging them. The order of those cards within the packets, of course, is perfectly preserved. So this is not going to shuffle your deck very much. But I think that it works very well in conjunction with other shuffling techniques like the riffle. If I were to take my deck and I've just been breaking it into half and half, you know, if I'm ordered with all those cards and I'm getting all those pairs and I can't separate my high and my low, what if I broke it into like 8 little packets that I rearranged and then I did another bridge riffle? Rachel, I see you in the chat saying I do it between bridges and riffle. Yes, the perfect lead in. Thank you for setting me up like that. Yes, I love tucking them between the riffles because they just make your riffles more effective. Honestly, it just lines up the riffle to shuffle different parts of the deck that were, you know, not lined up with each other. And it really will add a lot of variety. This helps me get much more shuffled decks. This one is now, let's see, and well, look at that. We got all these aces at the bottom. Impressive. I mean, it's random, right? Happens. We've got queens paired up. All my 4s together. 3 of a kind. I'm ready to deal 3 of a kind with this deck on the shuffle. There's my kings. So we're still seeing slight biases in the arrangement of ranks in this deck, even after all of that shuffling. It is fairly randomized. I'd say it's probably okay to start drawing from this. And I would maybe just go ahead and protect myself with draws from other parts of the deck. I like cutting and then burning cards. I am concerned, especially with a deck that is as worn as this one, that it might have some cards that are biased, that it'll cut to more frequently. I've taken note in some of my decks what cards they're biased that they draw to. Speaking of worn decks, I should get out the first deck that I used as a pocket deck. This one. This one's in quite the condition. Just take a look. I have got some cards that are like falling apart, like ready to break in half. Many cards are missing. 3 7s together, cool. And they're just like in crazy. There are marked cards all over this deck. There are many that I can recognize from the card back alone. This is a tricky deck to shuffle also because it's in a condition where it doesn't really bridge that well anymore. Well, I actually just did a pretty darn good bridge with it. Never mind. But if I'm bending cards that are ready to break in half like that, it's just not great. This deck has graduated beyond the bridge shuffle. It's not capable of it anymore. This deck has graduated beyond a lot of things. Oh, poor 8 of Pentacles. What a rough. Oh. Anyway, love this deck. This was gifted to me by my mom, and it's a keepsake, so it's still here in spite of its condition. There are ways that I can shuffle it, of course, between the Cascade and another technique that I call weaving that I came up with on my own and later discovered, of course, people were doing. Even with a deck in this condition, I can manage this one. I am just going to, with a thumb and a finger on the back, sorry, I'll get, fingers on the back, I'm going to pull and I'm going to separate those two cards, bottom and top card. As I pull, I'm going to let them fall into my palm down there and go in for another. So I took bottom, top, and then one more inside, and I can iterate that way over the whole deck, weaving two at a time until pulled all the way through to the last card. And it's nice because I'll pull like one card out after that. And I feel like I've really intentionally placed every single individual card to have with a tarot reading. I really enjoy this shuffle to delicately and consciously go through the entire deck. And I want to talk a little bit about what I'm doing in terms of my mind and my preparation for the reading during the shuffle that folds into that in a moment. I want to point out some drawbacks with this shuffling technique that make it necessary to combine it with things like the Cascade to really make it effective. As I'm pulling like this, notice a Jack of Hearts on the bottom is going to be on the bottom, and then I'm going to start stacking cards on top of it. If I were to stop and start again, of course, I've still got Jack of Hearts on the bottom. No matter how many times I do this, Jack of Hearts is not going to change positions. And the cards at the bottom of the deck are going to change positions much slower than cards at the top. They're going to be, or cards in the middle that are going to be thrust towards the top and move dramatically from the middle of the deck to the very top of the deck versus, well, I guess it's a pretty dramatic move from the top to the very bottom. But those cards on the bottom that I'm only tucking one or two underneath have only moved up a little bit. So it's not totally shuffling the entire deck evenly. I've got to be aware of cards at the bottom that are just stuck and resting, which is why I will enjoy doing a Cascade, which will throw my bottom card into the middle of the deck somewhere, and I'll combine my weaving and my Cascade to shuffle a deck that's in the condition like this one is. Also, when I'm drawing and I'm drawing on a deck that has a lot of bias, and I'm aware of that, and I'm aware that my Cascade is going to cut at those biases, and my cuts are going to kind of cut at those biases, and that means that there are certain cards that I'm going to encounter more frequently, probably on the top and bottom of the deck. With that in mind, I will often do my weave like 3 times just to burn a handful, or you could just deal out a handful and then draw. This is the same, I guess, effect as spreading the deck and choosing one, or choosing a clump that I'll weave out of, which I prefer doing sometimes, so that I'm not really preferring the look of any of these marked cards against each other. Trying to really make sure that my draws are not biased, even if my deck is. It's important. I also just really enjoy the weave. It's really nice to do. Patient, calm, contemplative. Oh, so much that's good about that shuffle for me when I'm going into a reading. I want to show what the weave does to an ordered deck. So I've got another one here. Same as before. Jokers on the ends, clubs, diamonds, spades, hearts, all ordered. Aces at the bottom. But this time we're going to do the weave. And we're going to watch how I draw joker to joker, top and bottom. I'm going to take the king of hearts and put it to the ace. Now my 2 and queen meet. Jack and 3, noticing the pattern. 4 and 10. 5 and 9. All of my hearts and clubs are being woven together in alternating rank fashion. They meet at the median rank 7 and start going the other way. 8 and 6. 9 and 5. 10 and 4. If I'm doing this perfectly and drawing only one at a time and not sneaking others in, I'm arriving cleanly at ace-king on the other end as I move into the new suits, diamonds and spades. I'm going to do the same thing. 3, 10, or sorry, 3 jack, 4, 10, 5, 9, 7, 8, or sorry, 6, 8. There's the 7s, meeting in the middle, and going on. The way this changes the order is interesting. Now my king of diamonds that was previously in the perfect center of the deck has floated to the top. Now, you know, we kind of got to see the order as it came to be, which is another nice thing I like about the weave. But it's still, of course, got a lot of sense to the order. Many of the ranks are preserved in their order. We've got suits that have not met. You know, we've got 2 suits on each side of the deck, and the ranks are definitely in a distinct pattern. So one weave is certainly not enough. Following the principles that we know from the math surrounding the riffle shuffle, it's probably going to be 7 weaves. That gets us closer to an ordered, a reordered deck. Before I do any cascades and weave again, which I think is really what's going to randomize how the weave really moves these cards around, I want to do a second weave just to show how weaving again and again will produce really interesting results. Now I've got aces that are meeting, and there's king, queen, 2, 3, jack, queen, 3, 4, still patterned, jack, 10, 4, 5, 10, 9, 5, 6. Now I'm getting a perfect heart, diamond, spade, or club, spade. Heart, diamond, club, spade. Heart, diamond, club, spade. My ranks are still in an interesting arrangement. Where, you know, I've got clumps of low cards and clumps of high cards, similar to what we saw on the other shuffle. So that's, you know, still happening here with the weave. Now I've done 2 weaves, and of course the weave takes considerably more time to complete than the riffle. But now, you know, I'm still, like I said, I summarized it already. Clumpy ranks perfectly. 2 perfect weaves on a perfectly ordered deck, perfectly distributed suits. They are so even, it's not random anymore. It's a problem. The third weave is putting kings and aces together. Ace 2, ace king, 2 queen, king 2. My suits are still perfectly distributed. I'm cycling between the 4 suits as I order this deck, though my ranks still showing some, either they're, you know, symmetrical. I've got 5 9s, 5 9s, 5 9s, 4 10s, 4 10s, 4 10s, 6 8, 6 8, or they are paired. The aces and kings at the end paired. So again, at this point, would you like to cut between this? Yes, cutting the deck is, I think, effectively similar to cascading. You know, if I'm doing a little cut, if I do a cut right in half and then I do something like a riffle or a cascade, I haven't changed it a lot. At least I've changed that bottom card for the weave, which, you know, the weave was like preserving the bottom card. So a simple cut will change that. But really a cascade is going to reorder the deck in a way that if I weave again, 3 king, 2 joker, queen 8, king 7, 2 7, queen 7, king 8, 2 9. I'm now seeing a pair of diamonds. I'm seeing some places where the suits are linking up. 3 5, jack 10, 4 4, cool pair, 3 5, jack 10. Weird that I've got 3 5s and jack 10. Still seeing those little clumps, those little patterns emerging across the sequence here. There's a nice clump of diamonds. That's cool. We broke up the suits a little bit. I like your suggestion, Rachel. Wouldn't you like to cut and just be not stressful to the deck and more random? Like, what if I just made myself 6 piles, as you suggest in the chat, and drew from these randomly? Now, I would be aware if I was doing this that if I'm using a deck that I think has some biases and where it may cut, that I may have activated those biases by doing this. And I might, as I'm drawing from one of the stacks, give it a quick weave of a handful of cards, or go through the whole thing to pull out the one that I really want from it, just to make sure I'm avoiding those biases with my cut. That's really the only disadvantage you get to cutting the deck, is that if you do have a sticky card or a marked card or something like that, it'll either draw all the time or always wind up on the bottom of one of your cuts. So I do like rearranging when I draw from the piles. But this is a great way to draw from all those different areas of the deck. We saw how certain clumps happen in the deck. So this is a really nice way to get around that without spending 15 minutes shuffling. Yeah, cut it, spread it, fan it, do whatever. Those are great ways. You can change your ordering of cards on the draw, you know, really freely. We're not playing like a card game where we need to order the whole deck and leave it. we're free to just shuffle between draws, draw willy-nilly, fall in different places in the deck. I do have an awareness of when I'm drawing several cards in sequence off the top of my deck. That, when I'm doing that, I'm questioning how well shuffled is it? How many cards have I drawn? How deep am I? Should I freshen it up with a little cascade, a little weaving, and then I'll take that. Oh, I didn't mention the problem with the weaving, leaving the bottom card the same all the time. I often like to weave some, and the bottom card in this instance was a joker. Instead of leaving that on the bottom and placing this on top, I'll reverse the order. Put it on top. And now my bottom card and those woven ones are right at the top of the deck. And I've got to be aware of if there are any cards that I'm shuffling back into the deck that I've seen. I still have an idea of, where it is in the deck. That's a pretty small area that I'm aware of, especially it's right at the top too. So if I'm drawing from the top again, I'm risking really knowingly drawing into cards I just drew. So maybe I'll weave that again. So now that I've shuffled it into a much larger packet, there's half the deck I'm aware that it might be in. And once I've got it to half, maybe I'll do a little bit of cascading so that I'm really cutting the deck in some random ways and really losing track of where that packet is that I knew the card was in. And, if that packet is still intact, I'm trying to break that packet up. Now I'm ready. Now I'll weave, set each card really, really intentionally in place and go through. And now I feel freshened up. Now my deck feels freshened up and ready to draw from the top and potentially draw into the cards that I just did, or potentially not. I think it's fair odds for either. I'm feeling random again with my draw. I'm ready. Drawn one, maybe two, maybe three. The conversation's flowing. And now, there's a pause where they're talking to me and I've got a chance here. Freshening up my shuffle again. Oh, that's a great question. There's the card that I was ready to draw because I just shuffled, woven, placed on top, and knew I had an unbiased, not a bad cut card ready to fire off that was from an area of the deck whose ordering and contents were unknown to me. That's a good random draw. That's what I'm going for. Really, I want to time check myself. Okay, good, I have time. I want to talk briefly about randomness and why randomness is a tool that we employ when we're doing tarot readings, and why I think it's effective. Randomness, interestingly, is often synonymous with, I think, fate or chance, I guess, right? Literally, or luck. Randomness is this really interesting thing that we feel so often that, like, there is some order or pattern that has to be. We seek patterns all the time. There has to be some pattern to the way the universe works, right? And so random things happen, and if they seem or feel significant to us, we deem them so. We call them lucky or fated, or a blessing, a miracle, what have you, because they had that significance to us and they happened purely by chance. The practice with tarot is this assertion that I'm going to invite random chance from a shuffled deck to invite the random prompt from my open-minded state to guide my thinking through, whatever question I brought to the cards, to glean insight, to glean perspective, glean wisdom. When I'm doing this and I'm trying to employ the magical end of randomness, of course, I'm setting my intention very clearly. When you're trying to work the magical end of randomness, you're verging into law of attraction territory, which I've talked about a number of times here on the stream because it's probably one of the, belief systems that lines up with my own and helps me explain the almost indescribable phenomenon that takes place when I'm doing a reading. I feel like I've spent my entire life trying to justify and explain, quantify, and rationalize the process that happens in a reading and how these timely, lucky, random messages come up all the time. At this point, my disbelief is completely suspended. I've been practicing my whole life. I've had plenty of times to just be like, I don't even need to know why I know I just know. So feeling comfortable there, but always been considering how interesting it is that it's randomness. It's introducing randomness that kind of brings us the opportunity for a lucky message, a lucky timely message. It's through the randomness is a really important mechanism by which our practice with card reading functions. So shuffling's important. Shuffling's very important. I want to talk about intention setting while you're shuffling. I talked about intention setting last week quite a bit. So I'll recap a little bit of where that falls into place when you're shuffling your deck. While I am shuffling, I like to be considering the questions that I'm bringing to the cards. I like to consider what I'm trying to achieve with the cards. Why am I turning to a deck of cards right now? I'm doing my check-in. I'm checking what I want and what feelings I'm bringing into this, that I'm carrying around the subject that I'm bringing up. And I'm considering how those form my complex intention that I'm bringing to the deck. And as I'm forming that intention, so am I forming the order of the cards with some intention. And that element of the ritual of shuffling to me is wonderful. I love the time that I spend shuffling. This is my time to breathe and meditate and clear my mind. And from a clear mind, consider what I'm bringing to the reading. And when I consider what I'm bringing to the reading, just observing the thoughts and feelings that come up in me with that. And asking myself how I want to fold them in to the reading, how I want to bring them in my intention to what I want from the cards. And I'm really forming what do I want from the cards very intentionally, really checking even those automatic feelings that suddenly became a part of the conversation. I have to make sure I've acknowledged and observed them, incorporated them into my message, made sure that my message is conscious, is controlled. I really want a clear direction when I'm communicating with the divine, because you get what you ask for. Be careful what you ask for. Be aware of what you're asking for. That's a cautionary note for those of you going into the practice. It is possible to give yourself messages that lead you maybe not where you ultimately wanted or not your highest place. Because if what I'm wanting when I'm turning to a deck is to get back at someone, and what I'm saying as I draw the cards is I want to better how this relationship affects my life, but I'm bringing I want to get back at them energy, you better believe the direction I'm going to be offered is how I get back at them, how I really make that happen. And if that's what I want, then okay. But be aware of how the intention you bring in will affect the message you take out. Very important to be aware. We want to be very conscious with our practice with tarot. It's the purpose of doing a tarot reading is to really focus ourselves and center ourselves and become more aware of ourselves and our experience and what we're carrying with us. And so that starts here with the deck face down, shuffling. And once I am set with an intention and I've really cleared for myself what that intention is, and I really know it on all levels, what I'm asking for from the cards. Now I feel set and ready, and so does the deck. It's at that point that I feel like, okay, I just did a weave and I pulled this card to start me off. Then I can dive in. Shuffling is great. Shuffling is great. Very important part of a reading. I described kind of the process shuffling when you're doing a reading for yourself. I'll touch on a little bit. If I'm doing a reading with someone else, I'm probably shuffling while they're talking or while I'm asking them questions. I'm asking them questions to guide them through the process of setting an effective intention for our reading. I'm asking them questions that direct them to what do you want from the cards? What are you trying to achieve? What is your intention here? What's the thoughts and feelings that exist previous in the situation that are relevant here? Let's get the exposition laid out. Let's get set. Let's prepare the reading. I'm going to ask those questions to guide them through a process that I described, kind of the internal personal process of. but it is important to make sure that you're getting answers that satisfy those questions and asking follow-up and clarifying and redirecting questions to help really satisfy the answers to those questions that you know are so important for setting effective intention for the reading. Similar as, I don't know if you are still here in the chat, Donut, but earlier when you asked me, I'm wondering what A thinks of me, I presented how I would redirect that question in that moment. You know, I'm going to reframe it in ways that ask more the questions that we want to answer, that I want to answer in a reading, that I think create a powerful intention to result in more perspective, more insight on your situation. And oftentimes when you're doing a reading with someone, or with yourself sometimes, the process involves reframing and kind of redirecting your question to one that'll be a little more effective, a little more helpful, a little more empowering, a little more informative, a little more applicable, a little more relatable, much more actionable. These are the important things I'm trying to set up in a reading. Starts with a shuffle. Starts while you're shuffling. I love shuffling while we're in the process of intention setting. It just feels so appropriate to have the reordering of the deck coincide with the setting of the intention for what the deck is to communicate. That's how I shuffle. As a tarot card reader, that is how I shuffle. I want to demonstrate for a moment that these techniques are possible on the much larger tarot deck. The playing cards are much easier to wield. I have rather large hands, which makes gripping the deck top and bottom and doing my weave possible for me, even with the large tarot deck. You may find it's more comfortable to hold the deck sideways, or I don't know, vertically. Maybe I was holding it sideways before, and draw them like this. At this point, of course, I'm having a hard time catching the cards that are now sitting vertically in my other hand and still having space to, you know, grab that next card off the bottom. So, I mean, experiment with what works for you. I have seen people do it all sorts of ways, and if you're reordering the cards, it's working.